If this goes on, don't panic. Bringing hope to the world through speculative fiction.
Hello and welcome to the 5th episode of If This Goes On, Don't Panic, Quarantine Club. Today we have Julie Day, writer and editor of upcoming anthology The Weird Dream Society. We also have some giveaways from Flame Tree Publishing. But first, we have Jaime Buckley, writer and creator of Wanted Hero, a humorous fantasy. Jaime, welcome.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
So I'll try to give a little intro here to Jaime, which I'm kind of cobbling from his page. So he's a father of 13, count them, 13 children.
Wow.
And a grandfather to 50. I confirmed that right before we started. He's a professional illustrator, game creator, podcaster, author of 25 books, 13 comics, 2 graphic novels. He launched Wanted Hero in 2005 and received 750,000 visitors from 60 different countries, all by word of mouth in the first 10 months. He said it was founded on the fantasies that began to bud and bloom in his youth and a reminder that he had pursued illustration in the beginning, wanting to see others achieve their dreams and goals as much as he desired to reach his own. So he has a world where you can find a bunch of information about his work and some of his amazing art on World Anvil, and the site is worldanvil.com/w/wantedhero. And I definitely recommend you check it out. It's really awesome. So thanks for coming on the show today, Jaime. We know each other through the Discord community on World Anvil, and I was really excited to get him because I love his stuff. It's so cool. Tell us a bit about it. Tell us a bit where it came from. Like, how did you come up with this idea, and what is it all about?
Well, I mean, growing up, I was just an average kid. It's dealing with kid stuff. And when I got married to my sweetheart and we started having children, actually the thing that really got me into, I had ideas for stories, and I've always been a cartoonist. Ever since I was 2 years old, I've been drawing. So I always had stories, but I was a huge comic book collector. And I remember the day that I went in with my oldest son, and I think he was probably about 3 at that time, and I had a hubby at the comic book store. So I went in every single month, and I always had my, X-Men and just my whole slew of comics that I collected each month. And I remember going in that day, and I brought him with me. He's holding my hand. I let go and take the comics from the cubby, and I'm about to pay the comic book store owner. And in a lot of comic book stores, you'll see that they have the front display racks that are in front of their counters, so they have as much, exposure for their comics and the magazines that they have. And I remember looking down at my son, who doesn't know what's going on, an innocent child, and he flips open a Conan the Barbarian comic magazine, and there was frontal nudity on the very front page.
Oh dear.
And I just remember looking down, and it was the very first time that I had the dad in me say, I'm not okay with this. So I slid the comics back across the counter and said, close my account. And I walked out, and I just realized I wanted to make things for my kids to take the place of the things that I was seeing around me. And it was at a time when, Marvel and Image was coming on the scene, and everyone's getting more risque in their storylines and things. Mm-hmm. And I'm not knocking anyone else. If that's what you like to do, hey, teach their own. But I was a dad, and I wanted to raise my kids a certain way, not keeping them shielded from everything, but I wanted to control the flow of what they're being exposed to as much as I could to be a decent father. And I realized there were not enough real heroes in the world, and so I had ideas for that. And you look around, and I realized, look, I've grown up in a... my parents were loving, my family was loving, but I had a lot of struggles growing up, as most kids do, and a lot of it revolved around violence. And so I took the experiences that I had overcome and started infusing them in these stories. And at first I started talking about them and giving them to my children, little tidbits. And then those stories became sketches, and those sketches became comics. And, I'd wanted to draw for Marvel and DC and, a big company, and I never quite had the nerve to really try out. I did do some trials and sent some my portfolio in, but I was always told, this is really good, but it's not the style we're looking for at the time. But I remember my father coming to me and saying, you're really interested in that internet thing, my old dad, and. And he says, well, if they won't take you, he says, well, you sell things. He says, why don't you just, figure out how to do it on the internet? He says, and sell them yourself. And I thought, well, why the hell not? So I started making traditional comics of my story, and then I would scan them in and use Photoshop and splice them all together and make downloadable PDFs. And I started selling them for 97 cents a piece. And, at the time, all the websites were just straight HTML. Someone quoted me like 20 grand for my first website. And I was like, I don't have that kind of money. And I had a few bids, and they were all, I don't know if it was just my area or what, but they're just snotty people, snotty programmers. I don't know any mean programmers, but these guys were just jerks. And I said, no, never mind. I'll just, I'll figure something else out. And they said, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to do it yourself? And I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, this HTML thing, I says, are there library books on it? And they said, well, yeah. And I says, yeah, then I'll do it myself. And I did. And I've also made a living out of making websites along the way. So I made my first website and launched it in 2005. And I just started putting my PDFs up there. And you could buy them for 97 cents through PayPal and then download them. And it caught on. And tell you the truth, we tracked what was happening, but I don't know how it happened. I do know one particular person that was always the first one emailing me saying, hey, are you ready with the next issue? It was somebody in college. And the guy sent me an email and said, hey, would you mind if I shared this with my frat brothers? And I said, sure, I would appreciate that. I don't do any advertising. I don't know how to do this. And he said, cool. So he emailed me the next day, and he said that he had sent it out to about 10,000 people in email out. And this is when Facebook was still just between colleges. It wasn't open to everybody. And the very next month, I was able to pay my mortgage with it. So I was like, and that just blew me away, and it just grew. And so I just kind of went with the flow. So if someone says, well, how did you do that? Honestly, hell if I know. But I've been trying to find that niche again. I really like people. But I will tell you this, when I wanted to take it even further, and I was wondering if anyone had was really paying attention to what I was trying to do. And I remember one particular email, and I know that he was not, I can't remember where it was from, but I know that it was a teenage boy, and he sent me an email and said, Mr. Buckley, I really appreciate your comments. May I ask you a question? And he said, do I matter? And that hit me. Because I'm a dad, and I had like 6 kids at the time, and some youth asked me, and I'm trying to imagine what kind of life is he living? What kind of parents does he have or not have, or influential people in his life that he asks a total stranger, do I matter? and I teach my children they have intrinsic value. I don't love them because they're beautiful or smart or talented or any of that. I love them because they're mine. I love them because they exist. And that's how I value people. And so to hear that from a child, I was like, well, okay, I'll take the cue that I can swear. I just went, well, shit, someone's got to do something about this and let people know that they're more than they think they are. And that's been my mantra ever since. You are more than you think you are. So I went from comics, then I blew out my hands, had to do something else for a few years, and I literally woke up one day and my hands worked again, and I've been drawing ever since then. But I went to novels, and then went from novels to the World Anvil, and I just keep going. I'm going to go until I'm dead in the ground, and I'm training kids to take on after I'm gone. So most of my kids are writers, and almost all of them are artists, and they're phenomenal in both fields. So I've opened up the world, and now it's becoming a family project. It's kind of cool.
That's amazing. That is so cool. I love it, like exploring your World Anvil site, which I've been doing, right? It looks like it's got a feel to me as if somebody animated Terry Pratchett, you know, right? Like it's got that slightly, I mean, okay, it's YA, right? So it's intended for a younger audience, but it also has a lot of, it's like watching a Disney film where, you know, there's stuff in there that's subtle and it's for adults, and, you know,
they put the jokes in there. They put the jokes in there to make sure that the parents are still going to watch it and take their kids. I know exactly what you mean. That's exactly what it is. But your example is perfect because my idea to wrap the whole world was, I'm a huge Terry Pratchett fan, huge Discworld fan. And so to see that he took all these different stories and these different storylines and series, but had them all in the same world, I was like, I want to do that. So I started taking the stories and planning it, and then I gave myself permission to not build walls and branch off anywhere and everywhere that I wanted to, and just include it in the same world. So I think you'd probably choke if you saw my idea books.
Oh gosh. Two things. First of all, we had a guest on not too long ago, J.R.H. Lawless, who is also a huge Terry Pratchett fan, and he writes articles for Tor.com about Terry Pratchett. You should hook up with him and check him out. I think you two would have a lot to talk about. Cool. But also, can you like describe like what's the difference between World Anvil and reading a novel? Because I even though Diane keeps telling me I need to go on to World Anvil, I have not yet done this, so I'm not sure what the difference is.
The difference between World Anvil and reading a novel?
Or just World Anvil and anything, really.
Well, the thing is that these are completely different experiences. I mean, I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this like, for example, it's centering around my Chronicles of a Hero series. So I'm just finishing up book 8 right now. So I took the first 7 books, and I am just expanding upon everything in the books, all the characters, the places, whether it's maps, lore, private conversations, and side adventures. I've even loaded up a choose your own adventure setting on my world. So imagine being able to cool. You read a book, and at the end, if you like the book, what do we always want from a really good adventure? We want more. Well, World Anvil allows you to do more that you can't do in a book. Mm-hmm. It will do the book and more. And so I'm taking people on a ride where they can walk side by side with their favorite character, not just the hero. I've got hundreds of characters here, all the locations. So wherever, what I started doing was taking my first novel and I made a list. I literally went through the whole book and made a list of every person, place, and thing on a list and made sure that I put that in my World Anvil. Then I went to book 2 and did the same thing. And I'm on book 3. It takes you a while. and then everything's connected because when you read about one person, you're going to discover a secret, or you're going to discover an event that they were part of that you didn't know. When you check out a timeline that takes you to a particular spot on a map, that takes you to a village, that takes you to, a tavern owner that had a conversation of, you can't do that in the book unless it's the main story that you're reading about. But World Anvil, the platform, gives you such dynamic tools to take your adventure, take your reader's experience to a completely new level. Completely.
So it's kind of like... Go ahead, Diane.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, if I can throw in kind of my own take on it here, right? Yeah, I talk about it a lot, and I've said before, it's a world creation utility, but that really doesn't describe it well. Each World Anvil world basically operates like its own independent website. It's designed to help creators flesh out their world in detail, like the stuff he said, right? More about the tavern owner, more about the tavern itself, where it's located, the maps. Everything is designed so it can be completely interconnected and interactive, right? So have you ever been to Wikipedia or a wiki of Ice and Fire?
No, but I've been to the versions for Marvel, and I've been to versions for Star Wars. Wikipedia?
Yeah,
with Star Wars? Is that what you're referring to? Yes, yeah. I've been there.
Yeah, so it's like that, only better, right? Because it's completely interactive and cross-referenced, and you can design it any way you want and put as much art on it as you like. And some people use it for that purpose. I do. Right? Obviously, Jamie does, right? But some people also use it as a series Bible, right? As a place to keep track of all the stuff that's going on that they're working with while they're writing, and they make it completely private. And I do a little bit of that too. I've got some stuff on there that's just for my subscribers or just for me personally, so that I have a reference that I can look at anywhere, because it's online. I can do it on any device, right?
Yep.
But I also make a lot of it public, so that people can look it up and go, okay, well, what is the Avalonian Imperial Navy, which is a thing in my right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So an interactive storytelling platform.
Absolutely.
That keeps growing. It's funny because Dimitri and Janet, the husband and wife, and the owners and developers of this, have just become such wonderful friends over the past year. And I told them, I think it was 3 weeks ago, I told them that I had closed down all of my websites that I've had for 16 years, and I brought everything over to World Anvil. That's how good it is. I brought everything over. So now, instead of the big address that you gave at the beginning of this, just go to wantedhero.com. It's going to take you to my world. So you go to wantedhero.com, and that'll bring this up. But here's the thing. It's not just a resource writing, because I'm using it as well. But you've got the ability to develop an RPG game, interactive game in your world. You have the ability to, like I'm doing right now, I use video, I use audio. I asked Dimitri if he would please, because I use certain podcasting platforms, and so he programmed it in there so that I could use the platforms in my World Anvil. So I'm going to be able to have a paywall. I go so far, and then I've got exclusive things that I develop, and that's behind a paywall for subscribers. And so it allows me to monetize to cover all my costs for everything, which is a blessing as well. But the fun thing is that I call Dimitri Santa Claus. I joke about this, but I'm going to keep saying this wherever I go. I call him Santa Claus because it is gift time, 24/7, 365 with that guy. It's always being improved upon, always. If you ask him, he will say that this is not even close to complete, not even as the foundational I don't know what we want to call it, just the foundation of where he wants to start from to really get creative. So, and I mean, we hit by its second birthday, when World Anvil was just 2 years old. I hope you get this right. They had already, by word of mouth, had over 600,000 users. That's
the figure that I've got in mind too, Jamie. So I think you're right. Yep.
So, and if you look at the NaNoWriMo that Janet was talking about and put up there, they're coming close to 1 million users now.
Wow. Wow.
It's funny.
And we're only like 2.5 years old. It's insane. I've been there for a year, and it's funny. I started with a free account. Within a week, I got a paid account at the bottom level. Within a couple days, I got the next level and the next level and the next, because I kept finding features that I wanted to use, and it was at a different pay tier. And then I finally turned around and said, man, I wish I could do this, this, and this. And it was hilarious because that afternoon I come in with a cup of coffee, sit in front of my computer, and Janet is announcing the Sage tier and opening that up. And I was like one of the first people to sign up. I was like, I'm going to monetize. Yep, let's go there. And I never looked back.
Two things. One is that, incidentally, we have now confirmed that we are going to have Janet and Demetrius on the show here at some point, right? We're narrowing down the details now, right? And the second thing I'd like to throw in there, too, right? I bought myself I've only been on this platform 6 months. I bought myself a master level membership as a reward to myself for finishing NaNoWriMo in a personal record time, right? And then I said, this is great. And I went to my patrons and I said, I would really like to do more with this. And they've never responded so positive to anything that I've put out on my Patreon ever. And they quickly made it possible for me to have the Sage tier. It's completely financed by my patrons.
That's awesome.
That is so awesome.
It is. It really is. I know I sound like a commercial, but if you're a writer or a game designer and you're not using this, you should be.
It's funny.
No, I don't think. Go ahead.
Oh, it's funny because, Diane, just before you told me about this, maybe I'd say a week before that, my friend at work mentioned it to me and was telling me about World Anvil. And so when this came up about World Anvil, I was like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. That's so cool. And then hearing you guys talk about it as a creative myself, right? It's really interesting to me.
Yeah, and I discovered World Anvil from a half-naked fat guy on Twitch. So it's true. I've told that story in Discord so many times because it literally was like and I ended up on World Anvil. I was like, oh, this is freaking cool. That was a painful gateway, but yeah, that was pretty cool. So,
yeah. So tell us a bit about Wanted Hero. Tell us about your universe and your characters and kind of, what's it all about?
Oh boy, we don't have enough time for that.
Keep it in 5 minutes.
Keep it in 5 minutes. My wife laughs. She says, "You can't say hello in 5 minutes. I'm genetically programmed to talk." It's the hero by accident story, and you know what? It's funny when I started making this story and realized how much fun I was having and seeing how my children loved bedtime when I would sit down and I would tell them another little story about Wendell and Dax and Chuck, which are my 3 main characters. And I sat down. I took about a week, I think it was, and I bought myself a really, really nice journal from Barnes & Noble, like $50 for a nice leather-bound one. And I mapped out what I wanted to make if there was no restrictions on time. And I committed to myself that I wanted to design a career that I would be doing until the day I died. That's how big it had to be for me to spend the time that I wanted to spend the time on it. And that's what I've got. So the main storyline, the way that I've arranged it is Chronicles of a Hero is the main storyline that is wrapped around an 18-year-old young man who, the very day of graduating high school, gets carted off and has to leave Earth behind. And that's as far as I'm going to go on that. You got to read the book.
So, Ultimate World, World's plural, I would say, actually.
Yeah, Well, it's all wrapped around him, but the fun thing is that I've done Choose Your Own Adventures and history and other books that take place hundreds of years before Wendell ever shows up, and I was very careful in mapping it out, and every single story eventually is spiderwebbed in and revolves around this 18-year-old boy. And so wherever you go in this world, eventually you will find. It's like the 7 degrees. What is it? The 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Is that the right? Is that the game or something like that? It's kind of like that. It's like the 7 degrees of Wendell P. Dittmeyer. So, and he's just the awkward. He's just the awkward teenage guy that you just like. That was, picked on and kind of a coward, and really all he wanted to do was have a decent life, and the universe decided to give him a chance to be something more, and because of circumstances, specific circumstances, he took it. Some days he regrets it, some days he doesn't, and the whole thing is an adventure as he feels his way bearing this mantle. So he ends up being given something that is extremely rare, and he has to figure out how to be what everyone expects him to be and find more of himself. It's around that mantra. You are more than you think you are. So there's always a character that someone can relate to. Always, always, always. So if you
awesome.
like comedy, you got Chuck. If you like attitude, you like Dax. If you like a mixture of both and innocence, you'll like Wendell. And then I've got a slew of other characters. And Wanted Hero, the website there, is actually written by one of the characters, not me. So that's Hobo Butler. So, yep, website by him. I help him, but he usually tells me to
it's an immersive experience.
Hopefully. If you're telling me it is, then I'm doing right. I'm doing good.
I have a question for you, actually, in the chat, Jamie.
Okay.
It says, this is from Jack in a Box.
Okay.
How have you dealt with stagnation with your characters in Wanted Heroes over all these years so that they make decisions that are true to themselves but still allow for growth without becoming a quote-unquote type character?
Stagnant. I've not had a problem with stagnant characters. I just haven't. And here's the weird thing. Maybe I am genetically programmed to do this. I'm not quite sure. I have people ask me questions with very technical writing and creative questions, and I don't have answers for that. I do this. It just seems natural to me. All these characters, I feel them. I see them. A lot of my characters are based upon my children or my friends. And so as I interact with them and as I write, usually I spend a lot of time in solitude, and I tell people, if you ever have a problem with writer's block, the best thing you can do is get rid of your phones, get rid of your internet, all that, and sit in one place and, by yourself in complete silence and just wait. Because your mind is meant to be active, and sooner or later it's going to start coming up with stuff because it can't stay quiet. And I just learned to talk to my characters. The only difference between me and most other people is my characters talk back regularly. So
I think if I might make an observation, I think in part two, right, Jamie isn't afraid to bend the barriers of genre in a lot of ways. His characters, like those in Terry Pratchett's stories, tend to have, like, they're sometimes have little touches of anachronism, right? In that, modern slang makes it in there, Dax is a cigar smoking, right? It's really cool because they become more relatable that way, I think, in a lot of ways. And I just love it. You know what made me fall in love with your world was your bio about Dax. I was like, okay, yeah, I get this guy. I like him. Right? So, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Jamie. You are welcome to hang out and talk to Julie if you would like, or if you're super busy, because I know you got like 13 kids, you're also could go. So it's up to you. Most people tend to stay though.
I'll hang out. No, I'll hang out. I only have 7 at home anymore. So.
Okay. Oh, that's like half the work.
Only 7, he says.
Only 7. That's right. I tell people it's not a contest because you'd lose, but it's okay.
Oh my gosh. All right. So next up we have Julie Day. Julie has published over 30 stories in magazines such as Inner Zone, Split Lip Magazine, Black Static, Podcastle, and the Cincinnati Review. Her novella, The Rampant, is a 2020 Lambda Award finalist, and her genre-bending debut collection, Uncommon Miracles, was released in 2018. She is also the editor-in-chief of the charity anthology Weird Dream Society, which will be released later this year. So, welcome, Julie.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, loud and clear.
That's awesome, because I'm in my car to keep away from dogs and children. This is not my usual setup. So we're trying something new together.
So you're not the first person we've had in a car.
The same. Yep. Yeah, she was doing it. She says she always does it in her car though. For that, why? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I usually have, different headphones and this and that, and because we're all sharing, and I'm like, okay, we have the Bluetooth headphones with the little connector to the cell phone because the computer's in use. Yeah, this is all going to go great. So if it doesn't, I take full responsibility for my MacGyver-like ways.
No worries. We've come across some very interesting technical issues doing these live streams, which is not our regular format. So, I hesitate to say we've seen it all, but we've seen a lot.
Don't say you've seen it all, because then you will.
Yes, exactly, yeah. Exactly.
I'd like to be a repetition, please.
Yeah. Yes.
I really appreciate you guys bringing me onto the show, actually. So I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, well, I saw you post something, and I think Matt Kressel may have retweeted one of your first posts about the anthology. And, Matt Kressel and I go back a few years. He supported my Lost podcast quite a bit, and regular listeners have heard me talk about him probably about 1 million times. And, we've got to be friends over the years. And so I looked into it immediately, saw that he was in it, and saw what it was about, and, of course, was instantly interested. And you have this very interesting title as well, The Weird Dream Society. So one of my questions was going to be, what exactly... what does that mean?
Okay, so I'm going to start by giving you like the double pitch.
Okay.
All right. One is about what the charity is, and the other is about the kind of fiction we have in the book. So the first thing is it's Weird Dream Society, an anthology of the possible and unsubstantiated in support of RAICES, which is a charity organization that is basically, it does more than this. It does education and legal advocacy for migrants and asylum seekers down at the border and one of the southern border. And one of the things they're doing right now is trying to help people get out of detention camps with this threat of corona, and also help people who are currently waiting for their hearings, making sure that they have food and money in order to survive during this pandemic. Mm-hmm. So they're dealing with some of the most vulnerable people in this country, because these are people that that aren't really recognized by this country. And so they have this great slogan, or maybe we stole it from them, maybe we made it up, I'm not sure.
That's creativity for you right there.
Yeah, I know. I'm not really sure, but we have RAICES. I wish I could roll my R's. I feel so embarrassed about that. Envisions a compassionate society where all people have the right to migrate and human rights are guaranteed. Some dreams can change the world. So that's the kind of charity portion of this book. But the weird dreaming, all right. For me, this is a book that is about strange fiction. All sorts of authors out there are doing interesting stuff around that where stories that use dream logic, they're surreal, they take the everyday and make it look different. You have characters that are you're so intrinsically tied to them that everything starts to look off, even though it's really not that different from how you'd see it in realistic fiction. Or the fantasies or science fiction stories that have this sort of unusual feel to them. It's like a kind of an emotional charge.
Uh-huh.
And you're not a weird fiction podcast. And I'm not actually weird fiction. I'm just a writer. But the weird fiction term has often been used as lately, kind of narrowed to mean a subcategory of horror.
Mm-hmm.
And this book is sort of saying, remember, that's not actually strange fiction. Weird fiction is science fiction. It's fantasy. It's horror. It's light. It's dark. What it is something that ties into, bypasses the analytical brain and pulls something kind of emotional and visceral from the reader, where there's something going on the page that's beyond plot or character. And that's at the heart of the story. I sound so sort of like abstract, but that's what it means.
Right.
But it gives us
I think you sound cool. That I learned something today. I've never heard weird fiction. I'm taking notes.
Oh, weird fiction is very cool. I kind of got into it because it's sort of a off branch from H.P. Lovecraft, right? I mean, like that's kind of how
it's kind of there's two ways of looking at it, and some people will say or kind of narrow it down to Lovecraftian. I'm going to argue with you though and say that it's far more than that.
Oh, I agree.
And that actually my first weird fiction that I ever read went back, in school, where I read The Yellow Wallpaper for a class. Many of us have read that short story.
Yes.
And that has nothing to do with Lovecraft whatsoever. No. But that like sort of, it's not timey-wimey, but I really want to say that. It's sort of like, that sort of idea, if it, of someone, it's actually very feminist, that story, which is, it's very much about mental health. It's about a lot of things, but it's also blows your brain kind of experience that really is not, when you look at it, about anything, that we would call a monster or
right.
An external threat. It's just internal. It's visceral.
Yeah.
And so I would say that's my first exposure.
I think for me, like the weird theme is more like this. It generally makes you question the mental state of the characters and like what is real, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. And you know why I love it? I'm going to tell you, because I think personally, everything is actually, we are incapable as human beings for a number of reasons there is no sort of basic reality. I mean, we experience things in our, that is filtered through the fact that we have eyes and ears and, taste buds and all these other things that exclude a lot or change how we perceive them. We're entrapped by our senses and by how our brain works. So everything we take in is an interpretation to begin with of something that's far vaster than we can ever experience. And then you layer on top of that everyone's biases and understanding that they carry with them from their life experiences. And while there's, in general, and the fact that we are at our core emotional creatures, our ideas of logic are often like papering over opinions. Sure. And none of those opinions are entire. It's a world full of people trying to feel the elephant, so to speak.
Well said.
Absolutely.
Oh, I feel so intense compared to whatever you guys are talking about.
That's okay. That's okay. We like to hit all, all the boundaries, everything. We're if we didn't want you on here, we wouldn't have brought you on. No worries.
I met Matt for the first time, maybe 4 or 5. We first met. We're friends now, but I met him at a writing retreat down in Virginia. That it was a peer-led writing retreat, and so there was a number of us who were invited, and I think there's nothing like just hanging out with people for a week and kind of talking about whatever.
Yeah.
To really connect. And sort of this show feels kind of like that, where we're talking about whatever.
Yeah.
Just in a slightly, an hour long format rather than a week long format.
Right. No, absolutely. Matt's a great guy. I just keep telling him he needs to stop writing so much depressing stuff. Oh my God, Matt, if you're listening.
Okay, so I'm kind of the, I would say, I would say that depressing stuff, though, like, I think of it as like, all right, yes, you could see it as depressing, but it's also a way to say, how do people find peace or a moment of grace in a time or an experience where there is no great outcome.
Yeah.
So, I think that has something to, especially now, that has something, the idea of us being able to find a way to deal with whatever's going on, even if it's not under our control, is that can be a gift too.
Absolutely. Do you feel like
that a lot?
Do you feel like that's reflective in a lot of your work personally?
Yeah, it does. Actually, it is. It absolutely is, which is why I want to defend him, right? Yeah.
I love Matt, and I love his writing. Yeah. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, no. It's all, I love all the writers in the anthology. We have so many really fine short fiction writers, and they were all incredibly generous. I was able to talk them through. They would either let me just ask for a specific story, or if they offered up something and it didn't seem to quite fit, I could read through some of their back catalog and ask for something else. We have mostly reprints that are from magazines and anthologies and all over the place, and some have been published as recently as a couple of months ago, and others are older. And then we have 2 stories that are original to the collection. So we have the gamut of writers, like Gemma Files and Nathan Ballingrud, kind of. Then we have people like Bonnie Jo Stufflebeam and A.C. Weiss and Matt and Premium Muhammad and James Patrick Kelly and Nim Harris. I don't want to leave anyone out, actually. I feel really bad. A.T. Greenblatt, Sarah Reed,
A.T. so
Sophia
good.
Samatar. Yeah, Elise is great.
And Sophia Samatar, too. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. I mean, just the caliber of short fiction writers you have is amazing.
Gemma Files is amazing. I'm a huge fan of her Weird Western series, so her Spellslinger series, it's awesome.
Yeah.
I think I'm fans of everyone that, the short fiction community is small. And so I find that, it was really sort of a no-brainer. It was just by invitation only to reach out and go, I know you would fit, and I know you would fit. And honestly, genre is such a kind of, or the genre people I know are really giving people, and they really want to give back. So everyone was amazing. And I don't know if your listeners really can't see it, but we have this cover. That is fantastic. And Gregory Norman Bossert, who is a short fiction author, but he's also he's also a visual artist, and he did the illustration for us, and it's I couldn't have asked for anything better. I could gush. I shouldn't gush. You guys should talk to me.
And you got a link I can put in the chat?
Oh, sure. You could go to WeirdDreamSociety.com, and that'll take you to our webpage. We're also up on Twitter, but that'll take you to our Twitter link is on there. Our newsletter is on there. Our pre-order links are on there. And then here's the other thing. Talking about Hope Punk, as you guys keep saying.
Yes.
Reckoning Press, which is a social justice press that does Reckoning magazine. It's mostly genre. Michael J. DeLuca puts it out. And he helped me out with the financial side of this because I needed a nonprofit to manage the money. So everything we make goes straight to the charity. And his press is a nonprofit. And so we're actually publishing as an imprint of Reckoning Press. And that was just out of the kindness of his heart. So there's a lot of kindness in this very rather dark book. That's the whole hug of it.
That's funny. Just a random question. Were you at ReaderCon last year by any chance?
I was briefly, yeah. I was.
Okay. I was too. We probably walked by each other.
I bet you did. We did, and I bet also I'm also one of those people who gets easily overloaded at a con.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like a hummingbird. I dart in, I dart out. I dart in,
Yeah.
I dart out. And then in the evening, I'll go and find some people and hang out, and that's much more my style.
Yeah.
Smart woman.
The first time I went to a con, I got myself very overwhelmed, and I was like getting 2-3 hours of sleep at night because I was just so like just overwhelmed by the people.
Amped.
And amped, and just and so the second time and the third time, I kind of took a step back, didn't put myself out there so much and kind of relaxed a little bit more, and it worked out better.
Yeah, you learned it faster than I did. It took me a little while to figure that one out. This is my, well, not secret, but I do two things. I always exercise when I'm at a con to like sweat out the energy, and then I also take hot baths in the hotel room. I feel like
good coping strategy.
Yeah, like I don't know which one it was. Did you guys read the Hitchhiker's books back in the, Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, so one of them is...
Oh, yeah.
So maybe you remember the one where there's a spaceship full of people who've been basically, they don't know it, but they've been jettisoned from a planet because they're useless.
You mean all the hairdressers and all that?
Yes.
All the non-essential people, and they think that they're the ones that are gonna be, they're gonna find the planet first, and
they're the
waiting
scouts.
for everyone else to show up.
So the captain on the boat, on the ship,
constantly in the bathtub.
Yes, he captains from a bathtub.
I do writing in the bathtub. I'm just saying.
I think that's actually perfect.
That's so funny.
I think maybe that's where I should. No, you guys would have heard splashing, but there's nothing like a good bath.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Why don't you tell us about your novella that came out a little while ago?
The
Remnant. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, The Rampant is a novella that came out with Aqueduct Press. It's a small press. It's a feminist genre press, but they were really nice. My book was dark and maybe a little. It's a well, it is dark, but it's entertaining. It's about two queer girls in southern Indiana, modern day Indiana, 10 years after basically an apocalypse that's kind of on pause. So it turns out that the end of the world is the true religion. The end of all things comes through the Sumerian religion, not Christianity. And so southern Indiana and everyone else has had to get used to the fact that all these gods have come down, and they're going to, and the rapture is here. Basically, it's kind of like a version of the rapture where the world is ending and people ascend to Nirbanu, which is where the head god of the Sumerian pantheon lives and takes his sacrifices. But one of the basically the equivalent of the four horsemen of the apocalypse are there's seven Sumerian equivalents, and one of them is the Rampant, and he's hiding out. He's hiding out in the Netherworld, which is the physical afterlife, which the Sumerians believed in, and he doesn't, so that the end of the world can't trigger, and so everyone's kind of stuck in a weird way. Now I think about it, kind of like this pandemic. It's kind of like no one likes it. It's really not great. In fact, it's pretty horrible, and you don't know when it's going to end. And so you're just kind of waiting for this awful thing to finish.
Yeah.
And so these two girls, they dig a tunnel down. They decide to go down and collect the rampant and bring them back, because the end of the world would be better than all this. At least everything would be covered. And so it's a coming of age love story, and also a hero's journey in which it's set. They actually physically travel down to the underworld. They meet people down there. It's a biologically based underworld with fluorescent, bioluminescent insects and mushrooms. There's a lot of, I have a background in biological sciences, and so I like to include those kind of things in my stories.
Yeah.
So I love world building. And so I have this very interesting underworld that has the plains, where it's like a really harsh version of purgatory, and then a river that you can travel, the Huber River, which is actually secretly the last name of my brother-in-law's ex-wife, who will never hear this. So, and that, I guess I'm giving that away. I've never told anyone that. And then we go to the Netherworld, which is supposedly where the people who are, you have to be physically, one of these things about these ancient religions, at least this ancient religion, was that you had to be physically intact to end up in the best possible place when you die. And the Netherworld, so only those who, no matter if you've been good, bad, or indifferent, if you're not physically intact, you can't make it to the Netherworld. And so these girls in the end are not only traveling down there to kind of make things better for living people up on the top of the earth, up in the top of the earth, up on the surface. They're also attempting to do something even better, which is to kind of help all humans, all who are, suffering, to find a better way to live than this, this situation in which they have no control and every outcome is kind of bad. So I guess it takes some of what I do in my short fiction and kind of twists it in that, how do you make it better? I guess that's what I do. So yeah.
That's brilliant. Love it.
Who knew it?
I just want to throw in Jamie's Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse may or may not be a legal firm that is manipulating gnomish politics. He just wrote an article about
That's fine.
Sorry, I just wanted to throw that in there because we're talking about the apocalypse, and I thought that was, comparative views. I like your unusual take. I like the fact, Julie, that it's not the Christian apocalypse. That, turns out that the earliest civilization we have on record had it right after all, and their afterlife and apocalypse is not so great.
Yes to all of that. That's exactly what the basis of the book is. Plus young love and plus young love and growing up, which is the other thing, and snarky teenagers.
Oh yeah.
All of that. It was actually the main character was actually really fun to hang out with while I was writing it. She's funny and she's strong and she's fun and she's stalwart. She's there for the people in her life, and she's really, even though it's a dark journey, she's a great person to travel with. So I really enjoyed it. And then it turned out, I didn't expect this, but the Lambda Awards have a science fiction, fantasy, and horror category. They bundle all genre together. They're definitely not a genre. So all genre gets a shot at this one category, and they ended up, my novella, along with a few, like a handful of other books, most of which are, ended up being on their finalist list. And I had no idea that would happen. So that made me pretty happy, actually.
Congratulations. That's awesome. That's cool. That's a hard field to compete in. Way to go.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, that's exciting.
Well, the thing I kept putting off was because of the pandemic. They wanted there's some really big names. I'm not gonna win the award, but they wanted everyone to record a video of themselves with a thank you speech as the winner. And I don't know about you guys, but that just is so self-conscious. I just was like, no.
Uh-huh.
And so finally, the day before it was due, I just had to suck it up and have my husband, like holding the phone and doing, he'd do a take, and then we'd look at it and I'd go, oh my God, that's terrible. And like after and take number 4, we were just done. We're like, all right, that's good enough.
Yeah.
Just send it.
Yeah.
Just send it. Yeah.
And the pain.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Well, one other thing I wanted to bring up real quick before we're out of time is you interned at Small Beer Press.
Oh yeah, I did.
So for those of you out there who don't know what that is, that's run by Kelly Link, right?
Yeah, Kelly Link and Gavin Grant are the owners and the sole proprietors of Small Beer Press. It's a press that's small in terms of it's considered a small press, but it's a very prestigious press. They have amazing book. I mean, the reason I reached out to them actually back in the day when I was doing a Master's of Fine Arts at the time, and writing, and I wanted to. I thought it would be interesting. So Jim Kelly actually is the one who introduced me to Gavin. Because he thought it would be a good fit. Yeah, so Jim Kelly introduced me to Gavin. He goes, yeah, I think I should introduce you guys. And so I ended up, and Gavin is very much he wants people who do their own thing, people who are self-motivated. He's like, okay, what do you want to do? And so actually what I ended up doing was I put together a podcast for them. So I learned how to podcast. I did interviews with the authors. I did readings. I got readers in. We did one that was 3 messages in a morning, and a warning is a collection of translated Mexican fiction that they had, or an anthology. And so I had a roundtable discussion about the book alongside Mexican beers. So we did a beer tasting and book discussion.
Nice. I've done a few podcasts with beer, and they usually end up quite delirious by the end.
That was fun, though. And then I also learned a lot about publishing, actually. I have 2 books out besides, the anthology, the charity anthology. I have the book, The Rampant, and then I have a collection. My collection is with PS Publishing, which is another small press. I like them both very much. Aqueduct and PS, but Small Beer, he does an amazing job. And I've talked to all sorts of friends who've published in all sorts of venues, and it's not just I think there's a reason writers of the quality that he has in his catalog work with him, and that's because of the quality of the books and his ability to work with the authors in a really professional way. And also, he's really good at marketing. That's
a huge bonus, right?
Yeah, no, I had no idea. I've had to, one of the reasons I think I could do this anthology was because having had 2 small press books out, I'm like, I kind of know what I need. As I've seen this. I've been involved in 2 books. I can just take care of this. This will be fine. And of course, it was a lot more work than I expected because I had to learn a lot of things. But it turned out fine.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And the reason I mentioned Kelly Link is because she's probably the premier short science fiction writer of our time. I shouldn't even say science fiction, genre writer. And I think she's the only one to win the MacArthur Foundation Genius Award, right?
Yes, she is. She won their award, I think it was last year.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
And she's an amazing author. She does... I'd say her writing is probably in the universe of some of the authors, including myself. Not that we probably draw from the same influences in a way, not just in general. There's some, there's sort of like a kind of writing that's, like I've talked about before, that kind of weaves its way. It plays with different tropes without ever committing to anything. And she's very good at that,
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
And so... her writing is I think that's my favorite kind of genre fiction that has no rules, actually. I guess that's another way of saying Weird Dream Society stories don't follow any rules. How's that? But yeah, no, that's Kelly. And then they also, Kelly and Gavin did a bunch of best of anthologies for a number of years. When you go in their offices, which is just like their offices, they would have all these awards just kind of like taped to the wall, kind of wonkily. You know, it was just like no big deal. And I actually, I would record because I had even smaller children then and even less ability to count on quiet. And so I would record in the stock room, which was full of boxes and therefore had some nice muffling effect. So I would set up all my equipment on top of boxes and just hope. And so it's like, for me, it was a great experience. And he was really generous to let me do it. And I think for whatever reason, he still lists me as their podcaster, even though I haven't done it in a long time. I don't know why.
That's cool. That's very cool. That's very neat. What an experience.
We do have a question in the chat for you, Julie, from a Jack in the Box again. He says, he or she, I'm not sure, probably he, doesn't matter. Julie, I really enjoyed Flyover Country in Inner Zone earlier this year, and it's definitely a good choice for inclusion in this anthology. My question is about the purpose of weird fiction. If sci-fi is typically held up as examples of potential futures, some of which may be worth striving for, like certain technologies, societal structures, etc., what role do you see weird fiction filling as it explores the human psyche? Asking this as someone who knows little of weird fiction.
Well, I would say that I'm going to tie to what I said before, which is that what I think strange or weird fiction does best is it bypasses the analytical brain. And as the science shows, or I'm not going to be able to quote it, but there's a book out there, and maybe I'll look it up later to give to you guys. But the brain has sort of like this is my interpretation, whatever I get, or my regurgitation. But the brain has basically two kinds of memories. Memories where we're pulling up a specific experience, and emotional memories where we're having a response, but there's nothing tied to it. It's based on patterning. So you have a response to something immediately, and it's like it's more than flight or fight, but it's along those lines. If we were to pause and analyze all the time, we would never survive because there's not enough time. So we have these sort of patterns in our brains, or I think of them as little like bypass switches that just say, in this sort of situation, I'm going to respond in this way. And I think what weird or strange fiction does a great job of is it calls forth that response and changes the pattern and so what we often do is we'll have a response and then we'll go back and actually sort of apply logic after the fact and say, I'll have a response to something and then say, I didn't like it because X, Y, and Z. But X, Y, and Z wasn't really the reason I didn't like it. I didn't like that person or that situation or that location because I just had this patterned visceral reaction to it. And so much like in general, writing encourages empathy because you can connect with a wider array of people, weird fiction allows you to connect with situations without allowing your analytical, get to how you're going to respond in the future in sort of a visceral way. And I think there's that bypassing of the analytical brain allows people to change their minds in a way that logical argument often, as we know, doesn't. So I can tell you all the facts I want to quote, and your opinion will remain your opinion. But if I get you to respond and actually understand on an emotional level to something, it'll change your reaction going forward, and therefore the opinion will often follow. Does that make sense?
They actually did comment and said, very cool, Julie, thanks. That helps. So yes.
Oh my God.
Love the real-time response.
I appreciate the fact that, you are coming at it from a visceral response sort of perspective. Humans are not logical,
No,
right?
they're not.
Humans often graft logical frameworks onto things to justify their emotional reaction, right? So I appreciate anything that deals with the irrational element of the human psyche and goes to those responses. So that's a really good answer, I think. That's great.
Oh, I'm glad it makes sense to someone else. The minute you go down a rabbit hole, you're like, I might have lost them. I'm not really certain.
Usually I lose myself.
I was afraid of that
Wait,
too,
what?
actually.
All right, so we've got 2 more questions for each of you before we wrap up, and these are questions we ask everybody. The first question is, what is bringing you hope right now? So, Jamie, do you want to start with that, and then we'll come back to Julie?
Bringing me hope, just in the world, and
just in the world. Just like, how do you get through the hard stuff these days?
Hope in this time, right?
Well, what's bringing me hope actually is the community that I've connected to on World Anvil. Just being able to have technology to be able to talk with friends and I don't know, I just love being surrounded by, I've worked 34 years as a professional illustrator and been alone. And I come to World Anvil and jump on Discord and realize, oh my gosh, there's this huge community and everyone's doing the same thing that I'm doing. I didn't know they exist. My people, and it's so nice to be able to just reach out and have lovely conversations. We're doing this because of technology, this wonderful podcast. And so just the technology that allows us, even though we're isolated, to still be able to connect, that's bringing me a lot of hope.
That's awesome.
Nice. And that's exactly how I felt when I went to my first con right there. That oh my God, there's other people that care about this stuff.
Yeah.
All right, Julie, your turn.
I think what's bringing me hope, or if I can find, when I find hope, it's that people are able to sink into something difficult, and then I keep seeing it again and again. They come out the other side, and they're reaching out to each other. And so what's bringing me hope is the fact that right now I'm able to, some family dynamics with my parents have shifted, and for the better, because it's more work for me, but we've also been able to connect in a way that we haven't in a while. And that's really, a difficult time has led to some really good relationships, and other people are just like small acts of generosity, which go a long way. And people aren't, they're not always selfish, even if when they have an excuse to be. They can be quite kind, and I think that's nice. Listen, that's my hope.
Awesome.
I'm totally feeling you both there, right? Obviously, my experience has been the same as Jamie's with this community that we've stumbled upon. It's really nice to be surrounded by other weird creatives who are doing unique stuff, because it gets kind of tiresome being the only person in the room and everyone's like, oh yeah, Diane's doing her thing again, with her and they, they like it, but they don't understand, right? So that's fun. Right? And I too have been brought closer to my parents with the shifting family dynamic, right? I've had to do more to help my mom out with certain things in this time, right? Because of the whole COVID nonsense. But as a result, I get to see my mother every day. The relationship's stronger. My dad is calling me once a week. Before that, months would go by and we wouldn't talk to each other, and it's beautiful. So I feel you. I think, I agree with what you guys had to say.
Yeah. So I like Hope Punk.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. If we just pause and think for a moment, there it is. There are great things going on.
Exactly. So, okay, last question, and this is where you all get to promote everything that's happening in your life. And we'll do the same thing we did before. We'll go Jamie first. What would you like to promote for yourself right now?
Just wantedhero.com. I'm putting everything there, my books, my podcasts. It's just a wonderful vehicle that I'm pouring all of my attention in there. So my entire series and soon to be subscribe interactive world. And so everything's there. Everything I've been working on for 16 years. So
wow.
Yeah,
sounds super cool.
He's putting on some great subscribers packages, right, for stuff that he's got going on. including a series and expanded world building around it and podcasts and just the whole thing, right? So highly recommend it, right? From, my perspective. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
Sounds super cool.
Appreciate that.
Sure.
Appreciate that.
And Julie?
Well, I'm going to say that beyond the anthology, which I really hope people pick up, talk about being hope punky at the moment. So weirdreamsociety.com. I really want this book to do well for, not just for both reasons. You can visit, I have short fiction that's just recently out. I have, my story just came out a couple of weeks ago. I have another one that comes out next month. And so the easiest thing is to just go to stillwingingit or .com because, I don't really have a plan ever. And it'll list what I have coming up. It'll give you links. And that would probably be the easiest thing because I'm mostly a short fiction writer. And, so there's always something coming up. And that's the best way to take a look. But I'm excited to launch this book, and then I'm going to go back to my own work. How's that?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Get the anthology, guys. It's, awesome stories by some really great writers, right? WeirdDreamSociety.com, right? And you'll be helping get kids out of cages while you're reading this awesome fiction. So how can you go wrong, right?
Exactly. Yes.
All right, so before we go, we have to do our giveaway that we do every week. Diane, what are the rules again?
Okay, so the rules are that you have to tell us about, this is a giveaway for someone else, right? Tell us about someone who you feel needs, a pick-me-up or a thank you or, something, a science fiction fantasy genre fan in your life who could really use just a gift, right? So You nominate someone, you talk to us on any of our platforms. That's our Twitter, our Facebook, this podcast, our regular podcast website. I've got a Twitch channel now. I'll talk to you there too, right? Whatever, right? And wherever we are, just tell us about somebody who you think deserves to get our giveaway. And it can be, someone who's going through a tough time, or maybe you've got some, essential worker in your life who's like busting their ass out there in the middle of this crisis that you'd like to say thank you to. Just, somebody you feel deserves it. And then
our email.
And our
Sorry,
email,
go ahead, Diane.
Yeah, give them our email. That's great, Alan. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can send it to our email too, which is itgodon'tpanic@gmail.com or itgodon'tpanic@gmail.com. And this week we have two great books by Flame Tree Press, Epic African Myths and Tales and Epic Chinese Myths and Tales. And I know I personally am very interested in the Chinese one because I just love all Asian culture for some reason. I just always have. I don't know. But they're beautiful books. And Rachel knows what I'm talking about. She's seen these on the shelves, her and I.
Yeah, I back when the shelves.
Yeah. Back when we worked at the bookstore together, they are just beautiful, beautiful hardback edition books. So I will send these to you. If your person wins, just let us know. Please let us know. All right, and so I guess we got to promote our stuff now, huh? That's the way this works. We do have a Patreon.
Yes, we do.
Patreon. That is patreon.com/ifthisgoeson. You could go there. We've got all kinds of tiers and stuff. Right now, though, we're really just telling you to please go and donate money to a cause, that's helpful to the world. We're okay right now. So if you really want to give to us, go to our Patreon and check that out. If you don't, you want to give to something else, that's totally fine. But please spread the word about our podcast. That's the main thing for us. Tell other people about us. Tell them about the live thing that we're doing. Tell them about the regular podcast, whatever. Just spread the word about us. That's the main thing for us right now, I think. Mm-hmm. Did I miss anything? Am I good?
I think we're good.
All right.
No, that's it.
Right. Special thanks to our guests. Thank you, Julie and Jamie.
Thank you for having me.
This was
Yeah,
great.
you're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Love having you guys on. So I am now going to read the credits. If This Goes On, Don't Panic is edited by Alan Bailey with production by Sound Maiden. Our theme music is by Father Flamethrower, and additional music is by Christopher Snydrosky. Outro music by Sable Aradia. Intro by Dave Robison. A special thanks to our guests, Jaime Buckley and Julie Day. Thanks everybody for supporting us, and we will see you again soon.